What is up, wrestling fans? Welcome to another combo edition of the Smark Moment Smack Talk podcast. We are doing both the ROH Final Battle 2023 Pay-Per-Viewpoint predictions and preview content, as well as episode number 628 of the Hot Tags of the Week, where we break down the current events, rumors, news, gossip, TV recap, and anything else that we feel like talking about from the world of pro wrestling that happened this week, or at least these past few days or so. I'm your host, as always, Tony Mango, and joining me, as always, is Callum Wiggins.
Hello.
So, Callum, we are in the midst of a massive recording session type of week. We did 3 episodes of the AEW End of the Year Awards. We've got the WWE Awards coming up next week and all, and people should be staying tuned for that. But as far as ROH preview and hot tags, any particular topics you're excited to get down into on this episode?
I mean, I'm looking forward to talking about Ring of Honor because it's not something that we do speak about particularly often, and many people would argue for good reason. But yeah, it'd be interesting to talk because it's one of their 3 big shows of the year, so it's worth getting somewhat excited about. And yeah, there are some topics. It's not been the most jam-packed week in terms of news, so maybe that's going to be a bit more of a lighter, breezier time for us.
We will, of course, chime in with all of our thoughts on these topics as we go along here, but we also want to know what you have to say. So, as particular, that's not the phrase I'm going with, as always, as per usual, that's the thing I was going to say. We want you to hit up the comments section below on YouTube, and while you're over there, make sure that you hit the like button. Make sure you are double check that you are subscribed to the channel. Ring that little notification bell too, because that way when we have the ROH Final Battle post show tomorrow night, immediately following the event, that you get your little email notification that we are doing that and that we're live, and you can join in and do the super chats and all that stuff and tell us what you're thinking about what the pay-per-view just was. Also, make sure that you hit that join button. Help us out on the monetary side of things. Toss a little spare change our way through the thanks button, whatever it means it might be. If you want to get access to the Darkcast or the Pick Your Poison tiers, you got that on the YouTube channel membership as well as the Patreon, patreon.com/smarkoutmoment. If you want to pick up some last minute gift ideas too, you can go to Redbubble and TeePublic and pick up all the different designs and merchandise options that are over there for Smark Out Moment and Fanboys Anonymous and A Mango Tees. And, anything else on that front? All that stuff's greatly, greatly appreciated, as well as just the fact that you're here listening to us. Thank you for joining us for this episode. So we will have ROH Final Battle stuff. We'll get into that, I think, after the hot tags. It's a little bit easier to get the hot tag stuff out of the way and then kind of loop back around, talk about things that happened in AEW, and then kind of factor that into there. Although the way that this Dynamite episode had happened, they didn't really do much ROH related material. They announced one match to add to the card, and then the rest has been kind of up in the air. They didn't even add some other people in the card or anything. So we'll talk about that in a little bit. But first things first, the hot tags. So let's get into something completely unrelated to the normal AEW, WWE type material we do. This is something that I didn't know until you mentioned it right before we got started here. New Japan has settled on a name for that new championship. That was the last incarnation of it was technically the United Kingdom Championship, right? Or was that not even officially called that? It was just kind of gimmickly called that.
That's what Osprey was referring to it to.
So it's, there's the United States title, whatever, and now it is going to be the IWGP Global Championship.
Yes, that is what they've decided to term it. I guess it's the leveling up from the Intercontinental into the Global Championship instead.
As I've said before, I'm not the biggest fan of championships that are named after regions that are all kind of blending together, because what's the difference between a world champion and a global champion and an intercontinental champion if it all just means regions on Earth?
Yeah, as I said, they just wanted to come up with a name for a mid-card title, so but the upper mid-card one. So I guess it's fair enough. They had the Intercontinental beforehand, so like TNA at one point had a global championship, so I guess that's taken on a similar role. I guess it's just to maybe give the impression that this is going to be a title that's been more competed for by different, I think they're going to put it out with the idea of it being a title that's meant to be competed for by all nationalities that appear in New Japan, but with every championship that New Japan creates, it will eventually just become a title.
Do you think it's going to merge with anything down the line? Like that whole Continental Class, again, another title that doesn't make any sense, Continental Championship now. But do you think it's going to end up like eventually merging like the Intercontinental did, and the now that they're renaming it, there's this, and then they merge that with the world titles down the line and all, the New Japan Strong title, maybe kind of factor that in? Or do you think it's just going to be like, it's a get to push from being associated with Ospreay and whoever, maybe Finlay, maybe Moxley, and then just sort of becomes another belt?
Well, it's one of those things that I don't think they're entering with the mindset of merging it down the line, but there is a history of New Japan eventually either dropping or merging titles, so I can't say that it won't eventually get merged, but I think they'll try and keep this around for a while if they can, because they don't have that kind of upper mid card championship if outside of the United States title beforehand. So they need a title of that ilk to be something that can main event some tour shows and give some people that are would be potentially be vying for the world title down the line something else to fight for if they're not, battling for that title.
Where do you think that eventually this whole strong open weight Continental Classic ROH title thing, like, do you think that's ever going to have like a clash with? That's a touring belt. The International Championship is a touring belt. Calling this the Global Championship and having that be effectively the United States title, that kind of seems, from at least an outsider's perspective, from my point of view, to be like, wasn't the United States title supposed to be basically what the whole strong thing became? Well, kind of appealing to the Americans more. And
it is interesting to bring that up because there are growing signs that strong is going to be dead pretty soon.
Just entirely?
Well, something else to bring up that I saw from New Japan that happened late last week as well that we didn't talk about because it's not super huge news, but Bishamon, who are the current IWGP Tag Team Champions, Yoshihashi and Hiroki Goto, won the New Japan World Tag League, which is odd for a champion to win. That's essentially the tag version of the G1 for them. And so it's odd to see a champion win those tournaments. And they've won, so they can challenge Hikuleo and ELP in a title versus title match at Wrestle Kingdom, as ELP and Hikuleo are the strong tag team champions. So essentially, they're unifying the tag titles. And if it's seemingly they're making... or at least they're suggesting that they might merge the strong title as part of this new Triple Crown Continental Classic title, then I think that there is indications are now pointing towards the fact that strong is probably not long for this world.
Because the strong open weight tag titles being merged, the strong title being the Continental Classic, that would only leave the strong women's title, right?
Yeah, which is currently held by Julia,
who's been rumored to be potentially heading to WWE relatively soon.
Yeah, that's there's potential for that. There seems to be even more signals that Mercedes Moné is not going back to New Japan in any iteration. So probably the title was created with her in mind, and so if she's no longer going to be around to hold the title, they may feel like there's no need to have that championship around anymore, especially you've got an IWGP Women's Championship already, so you don't need to have a secondary women's title as well.
That'd be pretty crazy if it's like, let's give the IWGP Women's title to Mercedes. We need to switch things up, so let's create a belt for her. She doesn't win it, and then 2 champions later they get rid of it. That would be kind of like, wow. What a cycle right there.
It kind of also feels like especially with the stronger relationship with AEW, that they'll probably try and treat. I don't say like treat AEW like strong, because that obviously wouldn't be the case, but they have a presence in America through AEW.
Mm-hmm.
So they don't necessarily need to have their own American promotion for that.
True. And I guess if they can just kind of do a couple guest shows here and there, they could just have that be a New Japan show. It doesn't need to be New Japan strong, technically.
Well, especially if either Moxley or Ospreay win the Global Championship at Wrestle Kingdom, because then they have that title and they are signed with AEW, but they hold a New Japan title, and so would probably occasionally go back to work New Japan shows.
Does Finlay tend to do strong?
No, well, not recently. He has done strong shows in the past, but he's seen as, at least by certain people in New Japan, as like the top gaijin or foreign wrestler in New Japan. And that's just from a status standpoint. From an actual like in-ring standpoint, he's far from the best gaijin wrestler. And as I say, I'm not a fan of. I can understand why lots of New Japan fans are unhappy about this match taking place, because the options who's going to win this title are two guys that aren't part of the company and a guy who is being pushed way above his station, who has been very, very underwhelming for this past year. So realistically, for a lot of hardcore New Japan fans, there's no good option of who's going to win this.
So we'll talk about predictions for Wrestle Kingdom when we get to that week prior to it. But right now, are you kind of going into this with the approach that Goto and Yoshihashi are going to win the combo belts for like the WGP? And do you think that there is a chance that maybe they book, because I don't think that they have a women's match for the card right now, right? Do you think that they might do Iwatani against Julia and merge them that way?
Probably not, I'd imagine. I think that I think they will have a match for Iwatani figured out, but we won't know that until, I think, Stardom's next big show.
When's that coming up?
Late December.
Okay, so that's still prior to Wrestle Kingdom.
Yeah, I assume that she'll have a match on the show, probably not actually defending her title, but she'll be in some kind of match and someone will challenge her, and that will be the Wrestle Kingdom match. Because they don't care about... Fundamentally, everything that's been demonstrated by New Japan shows that they just have this title because they feel like they were pressured into doing it. They don't care about it. Every single match that they've had for this championship on any big show has been sub like 10, 12 minutes. So yeah, and it's usually like second or third match on the card, and then they just move on, pretend like it didn't exist. So
it's like WWE and the women's tag titles.
No, they actually feature the women's tag team champions on their show.
Oof, that's bad if that's the better one of the two. So outside of those New Japan stories, there's actually something on the TNA side of it to talk about. Trent Seven and Kushida have signed to TNA Wrestling, 2 more additions to the roster of this like somewhat resurgence. I don't think that they're going to be like lighting up the pro wrestling world and changing the game necessarily, but they're 2 good talents to have. It's pretty good.
Yeah, as I say, it's good to see that TNA are like putting their money where their mouth is in terms of trying to make this revival as strong as possible. I mean, there is reports out there that they did make a 7-figure offer to Will Ospreay before he ended up signing with AEW. So they are trying to get a lot of talent together, and that's what we need. We need a viable number 3 wrestling company in North America, and to take some of the people from AEW and WWE that we know could do more if they were given more opportunities and give them a more prominent position. And also build up their own people as well. I don't want like the people they currently have to lose out, although I could probably do with less Tommy Dreamer.
Is he really doing stuff right now still?
Oh, he's fucking digital champion in AEW.
Really?
In TNA right now. He's a champion in TNA right now.
Good for him, but why?
I don't know. I mean, he's done a lot. He does a lot back behind the scenes for TNA, so I guess this is like a way of giving him his flowers. But come on, dude, you lost relevancy in 2001. like why are you still what are you still doing hanging around here now? It's crazy. But yeah, these two signings. I mean, Kushida, we obviously know how great he is. He's somewhat past his peak in terms of in-ring performance, but he's still like a really good name to have around, and that's a good like name to put on some decent matches. He's obviously got a tag team relationship with Alex Shelley as well, if they wanted to get back together and do the time splitters thing. Then Trent Seven again is on the veteran side of things, but he's a solid hand to have. He's a good promo. He's as a solid wrestler. So there's some good people to have. They've recently signed a guy called Leon Slater from the UK independent scene, who's very, very, very exciting. Like more of a flippy guy, but has a lot of potential to grow. So yeah, I think that it is very good to see that they are like making moves quickly to snap up some talent and get them on board. So it'd be interesting to see, because yeah, we're literally just a couple of weeks away from seeing the new TNA in action and how that actually is changing the product for them.
It's really interesting how much in the past few years there have been these promotions that are popping up, and like if you go back 4 years ago, or yeah, technically speaking, if you go back a couple more years, even before that, like before AEW was the thing and stuff, but in the past few years, AEW, there's the Wrestling Entertainment Series or whatever it was called, the thing that AOP tried to create for a split second that never ended up running any other shows or anything. There's the Wrestling Women's Army thing. Obviously there's been switches over with like Impact to TNA and Ring of Honor being purchased from Tony Khan, and there's the NXT Europe that didn't work out. NXT UK goes away. NWA is bouncing around all over the place, and it's amazing to me how many what's his name's Freddie Prinze Jr. still hasn't even been like announced for a name yet, and we still yet have another one to talk about here with like, pay attention to this, because Cody Rhodes and QT Marshall filed a trademark for Turnbuckle Championship Wrestling, and that seems to be set up essentially for being another promotion. And like, don't we have the Nightmare Factory? Like, how many things are we gonna have here? You think this is gonna be an actual like an indie promotion, or?
I mean, why not? I mean, I'm never going to be against having more places for wrestlers to work and get better before they potentially go up to the major leagues. You always need
major league wrestling
territories. Well, yeah, you always need developmental grounds to have people actually, wrestling and making mistakes and growing in front of an actual audience. You can't, as much as WWE tries to tell you this, you can't get so much like significantly better working in a performance center in front of nobody except just a few trainers and your peers. You need to actually have a crowd to show you what you're doing is right or wrong, and to learn how to adjust your style based on how the crowd is behaving. And so, yeah, I'd say I'm more than happy to see other promotions, whether it is like a really big deal, like probably won't be, but it'll just be, maybe that's just a promotion to give the people at the Nightmare Factory some like opportunity and seasoning before they graduate to another level.
Somebody somewhere, I'm certainly not going to do it. Somebody's going to have to like create a list of all these different places, like the training centers and the little promotions and the bigger ones and all, but like, there's like Reality Wrestling, and there's like the Flatbacks, and oh god, what's the name of the one that Seth has? Black and Bold, I think.
Yeah, I think so, yeah.
And like, yeah, if the Nightmare Factory is gonna start working with like Turnbuckle Championship Wrestling being a little promotion, and the Young Bucks had recently done the whole thing, the KTB Wrestling, what's a trademark that they had done. Who knows in the span of another year or so if we're going to be looking at the landscape, and it's going to be, you know, how many more promotions are going to be out there, how many are going to kind of go under and merge, or kind of advance to a different level or anything. But Turnbuckle Championship Wrestling is a term that has been around for a while. It's something that Dusty Rhodes had created. So even if they don't do anything with it, the idea that they own the rights to it makes perfect sense to me. And I don't know. I mean, Nightmare Factory being a performance center of sorts, and then Turnbuckle Championship Wrestling being a promotion where they run shows out of that, like, that could work. You know, little tiny indie shows and stuff. I still think American Dream Wrestling probably sounds a little bit better, but yeah, to each their own. Wonder what you would do with the belts of that, and if it was called American Dream Wrestling. It'd be like the American Dream Champion. Oh, but then it's the United States Champion, and throws it all off again. We're back to that discussion. But that's, I don't think it's an exit strategy for Cody, but it might be what one of the things is that QT Marshall is going to be working on going forward. So for anybody who's wondering if he was just going to pop up on another promotion, maybe he's more interested in doing this. Something to keep in mind.
Probably the only way to confirm that he is a main eventer in his promotion is to create his own.
You think that he starts off and it's like, I think we need a real solid hand to be the first champion.
Yeah.
I think I'll do it.
I nominate me.
Yeah. If I have to, like, anybody who opposes, say aye, and it's in a room by himself. He starts raising his hand a little bit, and he's like, no, stop.
Stop it, you.
Stop it, me. Well, the eyes have it, you know. Let's see what other topics we can spin out from that one. No, I mean, in the sense of talking about where promotions go and stuff, let's talk about this thing with Warner Brothers Discovery. And one of the things that's coming out this week is that AEW's PR team is apparently going to be moving under the Warner Sports umbrella and being somewhat managed by them specifically, which is kind of interesting that they would do that. I don't know what the benefits and, you know, procedures are with this, but Nick Hausman had reported about this, saying, let me figure out where this quote was right here. I've been told that AEW's PR team has moved under the Warner Sports umbrella. Now the people who are dealing with the PR wing with the NBA and others are working closely with AEW. I was told that this was an indicator that AEW is tightening their relationship with Warner. It seemed the first quarter of 2024 is the quarter to get your content over to Max for streaming. So the first quarter of 2024 will be a big tell for AEW's future. If we don't see something, I have to wonder where Tony's taking this. And there's also another report saying this whole like revenue share thing that they had going on with Warner is basically not going to continue going forward, that Warner's not as big of a fan of what they had thought could be like the positives for that. Also, more discussion that WWE could be bringing Raw to TNT or TBS, and that maybe that might have an influence on the way that AEW could get picked up, or any kind of exclusivity deals, which may or may not be a thing anymore. WWE might be willing to just kind of play ball a little bit more that they're under Endeavor. What do you think is going to end up happening with all this stuff?
Well, both Nick Hausman and Dave Meltzer reporting that at least that there are conversations going on between Warner Bros. Discovery and WWE regarding potentially moving Raw over to there, and other people are saying that that's not necessarily the case, or that's not that they've necessarily heard. So it's kind of, there's just a lot of speculation out there, but it's basically gone from being a completely dead issue to being something that at least people are mentioning again. I personally think that at this point with WWE, they've sewn up where SmackDown is, and they've sewn up where NXT is going to be moving forward. So the only thing that they need to do is Raw, and all indications are suggesting that with Raw, they're just going to the highest bidder. Mm-hmm. Doesn't matter what network, doesn't matter. Well, I assume they wouldn't want to go to any like the shopping channel or something like that. But but
If they paid enough, then they might. Who knows?
Yeah, maybe. But I think from what Meltzer was saying, they're looking for around about $400 million a year for whatever the next deal will be. And I don't know necessarily if they'll manage to get that much for Raw, but I'd say there are names in it. There's like everyone's still bringing up the likes of Amazon and Disney for like FX and USA aren't completely out of the running, and I don't think like Warner Bros. Discovery probably would at least be open to the suggestion. But then again, my mindset would be if you can get, of course, WWE would get you slightly higher ratings, but are the ratings that they would get on TNT or TBS so much significantly higher than AEW's that you're willing to pay like 3 or 4 times the amount that you would get to keep AEW?
Right. And you already have a lot of your built-in assets. You already have people that are familiar with each other. There's not to really like equate it as exactly the same thing, but I'm interested in getting a new phone like coming up, and I've had an Android phone the entire time. I've never had an iPhone. And I'm like comparing the different things, and I'm like, all right, well, the Samsung Galaxy whatever is like $1,200. The iPhone 15 is around the same price, but then, if they balance out as being like the pros and cons for each are worth it, or if the price tag's a major difference, then it ends up leaning more to a direction. But am I really going to potentially spend a tiny bit less money to have to switch everything all over to the Apple system? Realistically, keeping Android makes more sense to me. So it might be worth spending an extra $100 or something to not have to deal with all that headache. And if you're AEW and you're Warner and, WWE is out there, the price tag is a big difference. It's not like it's an extra $100 in comparison to that. We're talking millions and millions of dollars. Well, the ratings aren't like it's, the one gets a 0.2 and the other one gets an 8.5 or something. Then you can justify that way more. I'm looking at that thinking it would be easier for Warner Brothers to just keep everything in-house the way that it is, and for another company like Amazon or whatever to be like willing to shill out the money and take the risk. You know what I mean?
Yeah, this to me just screams more of this is a way for WWE to maybe at least warn a couple of other people about, we might be talking to these guys about this to try and bump up any other person's bid to get Raw if they are so keen to get Raw. And it's also maybe a play by Warner Brothers Discovery to get AEW to lower their money as well. So yeah, I can understand the reasons why doing it just from a negotiation standpoint, even if there is no concrete plans to move ahead or there's any real ambition to put Raw onto TNT or TBS. But I can understand that just from a business standpoint why you would pretend that was likely.
There's no negatives from...
Well, there's for AEW and for anyone that's bidding for Raw.
From Warner Brothers to talk about stuff,
No, exactly, yeah.
Because Warner Brothers is... I would think of it more as... it's kind of... Take your pick about your perspective for it, but like... The AEW would need Warner Brothers more than Warner Brothers necessarily needs AEW, in the sense that the ratings might be something that saves them, but it's less likely that a network goes down rather than a show stops producing a show. And AEW is going to find a spot. Like, Tony Khan's not going to just give up on this if they were to not get picked up by Warner Brothers. They would go to another channel. They'd find something. They'd work out some deal with whatever. It might not be anything quite as good, but if we've seen Impact last as long as it has and bounce around the way that they've done, AEW will figure out a way. So it's not like they're in any danger of,
I would be, I'd be highly surprised if they wouldn't be able to find anything else, but like Fox would be surely would be, if they're still interested in professional wrestling, surely Fox would be ready to snap them up immediately, and that would be, I think that would be a step up for them if they were to end up on Fox.
Yeah, I think if you can get, especially if you can get network, like how SmackDown was on Fox itself rather than like FS1 or whatever, that would definitely be a step up. And that would almost be better off as far as like the commercials and stuff go. Take a little bit less of an upfront payment and then potentially make more on the long run for AEW. But
I mean, even if they end up on FS1 instead.
Even that, yeah, potentially. Depending on, I don't know exactly the numbers breakdown as far as like what the reach FS1 has compared to like TBS, but or TNT
probably
or
less
whatever.
because AEW typically beats like if well, not I say typically, but AEW has beaten episodes of SmackDown that aired on FS1, like on and that's even like episodes of Rampage.
I would think
like earlier episodes of Rampage.
I'm like, you never know, because at the beginning of the year, WWE was still owned by Vince McMahon, so it's like you never know how things are going to change. But I'm still banking on the idea that I can't imagine TNT or TBS is going to host Monday Night Raw. I think they're going to keep AEW going forward, figure out some kind of deal with the whole Max thing. We're going to get some announcement throughout 2024 about like sorting that all out. And Raw, I don't know though, because it's like Raw could go to FX, Raw could go to Amazon. Part of me still just thinks it's going to stick around in USA though. Like that eventually USA is going to go, all right, and they're just going to pay, you know? Especially with CM Punk.
We'll wait and see. I think again they're just going to go to whoever the highest bidder is for that out of the more reputable names. And I also think that if they are going to the highest bidder, I think we should at least be preparing ourselves mentally for the possibility that we're not going to be calling it Monday Night Raw anymore.
Yeah, that's more and more discussion about that they might switch that, which I hope that they don't, because I'm used to that being the case. I don't want to have to change up the whole dynamic again. I don't even want to change necessarily SmackDown, but I'm more willing to change SmackDown than I am Monday Night Raw.
But it might just be a switch of other things. Like I think that like if Raw was to change nights, let's like for instance, it has to go on Wednesday, then you probably get AEW on Mondays instead. Potentially. Like I don't know how much they can like move things around. Maybe then you move NXT over onto Mondays instead. Like that's when the CW do that. So yeah, we could be seeing a shake-up based on this. This is probably one of the biggest television deal shake-ups that we've seen going forward, because I mean there was all kind of like 2 on USA and then 1 on Fox, and now there's 1 on USA, 1 on the CW, and then one's going to be somewhere we don't even know yet.
This is the first time that they're negotiating under Endeavor, so that's a different kind of process entirely. So we don't know how their approach is going to be compared to what Vince used to do in the past when he was the one controlling everything, and now he has less control and all. So we're in a weird state of flux here. But, you know, I mean, we'll talk about how that all plays out at the end of the year awards for next year. We have this year's that we still haven't even finished yet. Real quick mention of something that's TV related, but not quite necessarily something to break down too much. But AEW has announced that the upcoming episode of Dynamite is going to be New Year's Smash, but that means that they've skipped, I guess, Holiday Bash. They didn't bother to announce that. We just had Winter is Coming, and New Year's Smash usually comes after Holiday Bash, so maybe they're just not doing it this year.
Yeah, potentially it might be something that they decided to announce last minute, because they didn't really put too much into the Winter is Coming thing beforehand. So yeah, it might just be something that they decided to brand it on the days leading up to that show. But yeah, as far as we know, it's not the case right now.
Yeah, they could be even just calling Holiday Bash something like, sorry about that stupid sirens, everybody. I've been trying to mute it every time that I can. If the 27th is the New Year's Smash edition, I still think that makes more sense if they do it around January, but okay, fine. The 20th next week, maybe they just randomly just go, hey, yeah, it's technically going to be Holiday Bash, but they could even just call like the 23rd edition of Collision Holiday Bash and just have that be the, they've some things before it's like just Royal Rampage. It's just Rampage is that or whatever. Although there's not many things that they haven't continued. And AEW tends to have a record of like, I think Beach Break is one of the only ones that they stopped doing. But then again, that's partially potentially because Orange Cassidy's calling his move that. Like St. Patrick's Day Slam has continued for multiple years. They've done multiple years of Blood and Guts, Fight for the Fallen, Fighter Fest, the anniversary show, Winter's Coming. So if they don't do Holiday Bash, I'm one of the few people that probably would care in the sense about being like, oh, I wonder why they decided not to do that. But I'm also a stickler for like, they should bring back Seasons Beatings and call that like the Fall Brawl Tour and repurpose these names and stuff. Something to keep an eye on, whatever those people are that are interested in those dumb statistics like I am. Let's talk about some of those TV things though while we're at it, and kind of backtrack and bounce around with some of these topics too. Monday Night Raw, still Monday nights. I'm looking through, see if there's anything really worth talking about there. I remember feeling like some of the episode was just kind of a waste, like Katana Chance and Caden Carter against Indy Hartwell and Candice LeRae. Nobody really, in the long grand scheme of things, is going to remember that, or Rhea Ripley beating Maxine Dupree, or any of that.
There are a lot of clips of that on the old X machine. How botchy that match was.
I didn't even really pay attention to it. I didn't see the botches.
I think there was one in particular I saw of Maxine Dupree apparently got her leg caught up in Rhea Ripley's when she was going for the Riptide, which meant that she couldn't get her up properly the first time, and so she had to pretty much deadlift her up into the Riptide, which is again an impressive feat of strength, but it looked quite clunky. But to be fair, if you're having a match with Maxine Dupree, it probably is going to look clunky. So
not to spoil too much for the end of the year awards, but Maxine is somebody that I have down still, even with that in mind, as one of those people that have had a lot of improvements over this year. So, yeah, she's still working on it. But McIntyre beating Jey Uso. They had that Shinsuke Nakamura and Cody Rhodes match. My God, how many sirens are going to be out there today? Jeez. Shinsuke lost by DQ with the red mist, which for a split second, I didn't see him spit out the red mist. I was just like typing something up. And then when I looked back at my screen, I thought it was blood all over the place. And I'm like, oh my God, who got busted open really badly? But that's what happens when you do the red mist instead of like the green or the blue. Mrs. with DIY again. I'm sure you're loving that.
Well, I'm not watching, so it doesn't matter. It doesn't affect me.
I love how Dallas wrote out this one thing on the page on smarkmo.com as Becky Lynch calls out Nia Jax for a lifeless promo segment. I like that. That was basically a segment of, I broke your nose. Oh yeah, well, you're mean. I wasn't the biggest fan of it either. The big talk probably out of all the things on Monday Night Raw was just the confrontation between CM Punk and Seth Rollins. And I'm seeing most people heading in one direction on here, and I got to agree with them. I think Rollins came out looking better. Did you see it?
Yes, I've watched that segment. Yeah, I thought it was the most real and like powerful promo that Seth has cut. You could argue in his entire WWE career. Like, it felt like he was putting his real feelings towards the man CM Punk as Colby Lopez out there and just channeling it into a good wrestling promo. It felt what a lot of WWE promos don't feel. It felt real. And yeah, I thought that he absolutely stepped it up. It's so much better to see Seth Rollins when he's not doing the ha 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 and all that other, and just
hi, I'm a visionary. Hi.
Yeah, and the fancy jackets and the like the crowd just singing along, and that's just all his character is now. But yeah, they've added a lot of intensity to this right away, and yeah, I think that it was a great segment, but it was a great. And maybe people will disagree, but I think it's a great Seth Rollins segment, not a great CM Punk segment.
Oh, yeah, I look at it more like that, though. Because I think that between the two of them, it came off more like, even though there's criticism that Rollins just basically cut the same promo that Hangman Adam Page did, which I agree with. They pretty much did. I think that it came off as Rollins being driven and passionate and having a goal in mind of like, I don't like you. If we need to fight, I'm going to kick your ass. I'm going to hold on to this belt if you're coming for it. And the locker room is going to push you out, basically. And then Punk basically going, And I don't know, Punk's promos in WWE so far have felt pretty flaccid to me. They don't seem genuine in the way that Rollins felt genuine.
Yeah, exactly. I think that, and there's one or two ways you can look at it. It's either a case that this is an intentional ploy by him to come across as disingenuous before he starts to ramp it up even further, or it is just the reality that he's pissed off that he has to be back here. This is his only option because he's burnt every other bridge that's available to him other than going, well, like he wasn't going to go to TNA. He's not going to go to like GCW or anything like that. So if he wants to make serious money in wrestling, this is the only place he can go back to, and he's probably, like I say, I don't think he's super thrilled about the possibility of going back to AEW after everything that happened. But in part of him probably thinks he's pissed off that he's had to resort to this.
Just sort of like that Simpsons thing of crawling through the door back into Mr. Burns' office.
I'm not saying it in the resort in the sense of like that WWE sucks. Far from it. It's just from a face that like he's had to go back on everything that he said. Like I think when he says that he's a guy that sticks to his belief, at least in his mind, he means it. And so he's had to go back on all of those beliefs and try and find a way to justify it to himself while he's back there. That's probably the thing that may be holding him back a bit.
So one thing that's at least potentially in the future mind of CM Punk, as far as like what he wants to get out of this, according to Wrestle Purists, is that Punk could potentially want to succeed Shawn Michaels as the kind of puppet master overseeing NXT. And that's an interesting idea to me because I can't quite picture him in that role. But then again, you go back a couple of years ago and I wouldn't necessarily think that Shawn Michaels would have been in that role either. So people do change. Think there's any chance that actually happens?
I'd be very surprised considering, I'll put it this way, Punk is in a lot of people's good graces right now, but do you want somebody who has CM Punk's history molding the minds of the younger wrestlers and getting them to behave like, oh, if you don't like what you're given from creative, here's what you do, or this is how you should behave. Do you want him being the one that's giving them those ideas at a younger age? I think, well, personally for me, I would, because that's how you actually get people that want to be stars and are willing to fight for their characters, right, Rob? But I'm sure from WWE's perspective, they just want them to be subservients that do what they tell them to do and be that character. And your name is now Fungus McSpready or whatever.
Hey, don't spoil the NXT stuff from the breakout tournament yet. We haven't got to that part.
But yeah, so I think that if it would be a lot more interesting if Punk was like at the helm of NXT, because yeah, then he would be forging more independent thinkers and people that are willing to fight for their characters. But I think just from a WWE corporate structure, I don't think having Punk in charge of NXT would be realistic. And also, like, people are bringing all this stuff up now. It's like he's been back for 3 weeks. We haven't reached the 9-month meltdown period yet. So let's wait until he's past that point and then start thinking about what his future in WWE is going to be like.
Everything can start off all hunky-dory and eventually you start building up some tensions and stuff.
We saw it 2 years ago. Mm-hmm. Like we've been down this path already. It's just that now we just need we need someone to just say something wrong in a promo, and then he's going to he's just going to lose himself. Like, I assume he's not going to say the line like he's been working with children here and he doesn't have to deal with Colt Cabana. But there'll be something that comes up that he won't be happy about, some decision that will piss him off.
He's going to get injured and have to talk backstage to Dr. Chris Amon.
That's the other thing as well. Like, in his recent track record, he will get injured pretty soon, probably as well.
Yeah. That's why, like, I mean, we'll talk about it down the line when it comes as like an actual thing that's happening. But if it ends up being CM Punk versus Seth Rollins for the title at WrestleMania, I'd be hesitant to put the belt on him.
I think you do it just for the pop. And
then if he gets injured, oh well, move on.
Well, yeah, exactly. That's the thing with WWE is that what everyone is saying, which is absolutely accurate, is that WWE don't need CM Punk.
Yeah.
So it's the mindset of, well, yeah, we'll give him the title because it's a big pop and a big moment, and we can put that in our archives forever. That moment, but if he then got injured a couple of weeks later, we'll just have a tournament and crown a vacant champion.
Maybe they should do an interim champion if that's the case, and then they can have a match on an episode of Raw right before a pay-per-view.
Hey, listen, if that example from AEW is anything, Jon Moxley's best title reign was that interim title run.
So Dean Ambrose is coming back, is what you're saying. Yeah.
I think that's it's like the never say never thing in wrestling. I think that's one thing that I might say never to.
Let's see here. That was Monday Night Raw type stuff, a little bit of the NXT stuff, but let's get into a deeper discussion about NXT now. You are not obviously watching NXT on a regular basis and checking out as much of the content and all, but I think that's within good reason, based off of some of the stuff that happens on a weekly basis. But for people on your side of the fence that don't watch it, here's a quick breakdown of what already happened, and then I'll give everybody a warning about spoilers for the next 2 weeks. But this week, at least, what had already aired, we had some stuff that was pretty run-of-the-mill standard. Cora Jade cuts a promo, Lyra Valkyria interrupts, Blair Davenport interrupts, Nikita Lyons interrupts. Oh, look at that, we're setting up a tag match, that kind of thing, which Cora and Blair had won. So you got to kind of keep the momentum on the heels there, especially because it makes sense that Davenport's going to fight Lyra Valkyria and all. There was a little fun segment backstage where, since they're doing this whole thing with Tatum Paxley being a stalker of Valkyria, that she had put her head over the picture of Becky Lynch on Lyra's locker, which I thought was pretty funny. We're continuing some stuff with Josh Briggs. He's going to fight for the NXT Heritage Cup down the line. They beat Metaphor. Talk about the men's breakout tournament in a minute. But one of the stupidest things that I was just this is not the direction I wanted this to go. So you're aware of this whole Chase University story that's happening with the debt, right?
I'm somewhat aware, yeah.
Which is essentially, after about 2 or 3 weeks, it's oh, they're in debt. And that's the big story. It's whatever. They're not really doing a whole lot of details on it. Guess the next direction that it's going. And who's going to be involved?
Who would be involved in a debt storyline?
Now you would think maybe somebody like a Luca Crucifino or a Kiana James.
Again. Yeah, because they already did that story of the Chase U and Kiana James thing.
You would think that it would be the business type people.
All right, so if it's not a business type person, then it's Cameron Grimes is back and he's got money again.
No, that would make way more sense.
Oh, okay, make way more sense. All right, then. Is it something to do with JC Jane?
Nope, not even JC.
I'm trying to think. Who would be just a random person to just throw into this? Nathan Fraser?
Even more random than that, I think.
Oh, it's not Scripps, is it?
It's Scripps.
Oh my god. I didn't actually think you would say that.
So they did a bake sale at a car wash, which is oh my god, come on, and raised $300, which is a quarter of a quarter of a quarter, I think is how Duke Hudson had said it, of what they owe.
Was JC Jane doing the car wash?
They didn't show any pictures, at least, because then they would have earned a little bit more money. It's probably Riley Osborne. But, Thea Hale would like it at the very least. But, so it's something I guess it implied that they owed $20,000. And the way that they ended this segment was Scripps hands a silver briefcase to Andre Chase, and he's like, I've got a proposition for you. And I immediately just went, no, my God, no. Because I'm I don't want to see OTM and Chase University in a story where Scripps has money somehow. And
it's because he sold his poetry.
And he won a couple games of craps in an alley, I guess. And he's got $20,000 to spare. What a this was a stupid idea to begin with, and it's like, no, now Scripps is going to be involved. God damn, man. So that's something to pay attention to going forward. We have a new name actually now for the Drew Gulak, Damon Kemp, Charlie Dempsey, and Miles Bourne crew. They are the No Quarter Catch crew. It's a mouthful.
You saw that was well, you actually see what that was trademarked for it.
Oh, did they trademark something different?
Yes. Well, it's pretty much the same, but instead of crew, it was trademarked as club.
Huh. No Quarter Catch Club.
Yeah. But then maybe they realised, oh shit, that's Blackpool Combat Club, and maybe they changed it to crew instead.
So I'm not seeing that on the trademark thing that I normally follow. I do see a report about it though, but yeah, No Quarter Catch Club, and then No Quarter Catch Crew. So maybe they had another one of those little, because recently they had Dion Lennox and I forget the other name that they had. It was like not Dionne Warwick, but whatever it was. They had trademarked like two different names, so maybe they were just planning around that, and they thought Blackpool Combat Club, yeah. Catch Point, really. I don't know why they didn't just go with that name, but No Quarter Catch Club is like, it's a long name for that. But at least they got a name, so it's better than nothing. We do know the NXT Men's Breakout Tournament. Now, Fungus McSpready is not advancing, but here is what we already know, and then I'm going to give everybody some spoilers. So we know that Obafemi beat Miles Bourne, and Riley Osborne beat Keanu Carver. Also, Dragon Lee, by the way, retained over Tyler Bate for anyone that's curious about the North American title. So, spoiler alert for the next 2 weeks. Fast forward if you don't want to know what's going to happen prior to these next 2 weeks. We'll get around to, when you see the NXT final battle graphic up on your screen on YouTube, then you'll know we're not talking about the spoilers for here. Here are the spoilers for December 19th, according to mostly The Observer and some other kind of outlets. Fallon Henley beats Tiffany Stratton. Afterward, Tiffany Stratton dumps a trash can on Fallon Henley. So that feud is just going to continue going forward, and that's a way to do it. Dragunov cuts a promo. Ridge Holland interrupts, and they set up a match for the future, which Trick Williams is kind of like annoyed at because he's got that NXT New Year's Evil title match. So later on in the night, though, they do the match. Ridge Holland dumps Ilya Dragunov on his head, and they do an injury angle. All signs seem to point towards this is just an angle, not that Ridge Holland actually dropped somebody on their head and pulled another Big E. So that's good.
Well, you do have to say that it does kind of, what does it say about Ridge Holland in the fact that you're utilizing him to do this injury angle because he's got such a reputation for dropping people on their heads?
It's a weird decision to do.
Like, hire a guy that drops people on their heads.
Yeah. I don't know why they brought him in to do this specifically for that, because
people would think it's real.
It's probably for that reason, yeah.
Because he's done it multiple times before. He's done it to Johnny Gargano. He did it to Big E. So yeah, people know that he's got a reputation for it. So now they're just utilizing the fact that he injures people or has injured people. I'm not saying intentionally, but just through his somewhat greenness, he's injured people, and so they're utilizing that to make people feel like that Dragunov was legitimately injured.
Crazy how they do that kind of stuff, right?
Like Nia Jax,
yeah, the Nia Jax stuff.
Becky Lynch and Nia Jax stuff is about that she's a dangerous wrestler.
So that's something that I don't know how that's going to play into NXT New Year's Evil, but I'm assuming that they're already trying to do an angle where it's like, oh, Dragunov can't wrestle and all, so we're going to try to push the NXT New Year's Evil thing away, that defeats the whole purpose of Trick Williams winning that match. Unless the whole game plan is just they realize that now that they don't want to do that match now, they want to wait until Vengeance Day, and they want to just drag it out for an extra month, which is kind of a shame if that's the case.
I think the likelihood is that Dragunov's going to wrestle that match injured.
Oh.
And that's why Trick Williams is going to become the next NXT World Champion.
Oh, you think he's actually going to win the title? And then they do Trick against Carmelo.
Yeah, this is the reason for it. Like you show that like you kind of build up the story that Dragunov at 100% can't beat, could easily beat Trick Williams because he's done it before. And I would say like easily beat him, but like he's a better wrestler and he's more established than Trick Williams, so he'd be able to get the win. But you have him be seriously injured, but through his own like grit and determination, decide that I'm going to give him his match because he earned it, and I'm going to fight him for it. And yeah, he wrestles injured. Trick Williams is able to take advantage, not in a heel way, but just by the fact that like Dragunov's not 100%, win the title. You get that huge Trick Williams moment, and then you have Camilla Hayes ruins the celebration by kicking him in the nuts and beating the shit out of him, and then you set up your next match of Vengeance Day, and then you do the rematch at I would do the match. Well, this is how I'd do it. I'd have him win the title, then you have Carmelo turn on him, beat him for the title at Vengeance Day, and then at the Stand and Deliver show, whatever they decide to call the next WrestleMania one.
It's Stand and Deliver.
It will be Stand and Deliver. Okay, then you have Trick beat Carmelo. Carmelo goes up to the main roster, and Trick is your champion on NXT.
Because I could see a scenario happening where maybe they do change the title in the meantime, maybe they don't, but it's at some point we're going to get Trick versus Mello. Like, it's obvious that that's the end game. Whether or not Dragunov is incorporated in that, I don't know. I could see a triple threat happening at one of those shows. Maybe it's like Trick and Mello against each other at Vengeance Day. Dragunov comes back and wants to fight them both in a triple threat at Stand and Deliver just to get all three on the card. Maybe that's how they kind of play around with that. But at least for now, they're going to do Dragunov gets injured. What's going to happen in New Year's Evil? So maybe they incorporate some other kind of backstage segments or something. But actually, the reports that happened on this had a lot of backstage segments that they don't normally do. So we have a little bit more context of how that's going to play out too. And, you know, for instance, like Trick Williams being upset about Rich Holland getting the match, or for all I know, maybe the game plan is Rich Holland's going to wrestle against Trick Williams, and it's going to be like New Year's Evil is Trick against Ridge. I don't know why they would do that, but we'll see. New Year's Evil, though, does have the finals of the men's breakout tournament, and here's what happens leading up to that. So Lexus King on this episode that Art already aired, he attacked Trey Bearhill, and Ava, who is just a subordinate to Shawn Michaels and completely ditched her character as part of Schism, sets up that Lexus King replaces Trey Bearhill. So he ends up actually beating Dion Lennox, and then Trey Bearhill goes after him. Later in the show, they have another match where Lexus King loses. Actually, no, this is for the December 26th episode. I'll come back to that. So Tavian Heights beats Luca Crucifino to move on to the semifinals of the tournament. Kiana James and Izzy Dame beat JC Jane and Thea Hale. Roxanne apparently slaps Ariana Grace. There's a triple threat with Joe Coffey, Charlie Dempsey, and Dragon Lee. That Dragon Lee retains the title over North American title, I should say. The Quarter Catch crew attacks Lee after the match. Cruz del Toro and Joaquin Wilde make the save, so it's another continuation of Dragon Lee being a part of the LWO. Cora Jade takes her locker back from Carmen Petrovich, which sets up a match for the next week. The Kid Alliance beats Tatum Paxley. Gallus' Wolfgang and Mark Coffey beat Hank and Tank. And then the 26th is OTM beating Andre Chase and Duke Hudson in what they're calling an all or nothing match. But I haven't been able to find any information about what that means. So that's kind of confusing. And apparently, like, Duke Hudson controls like the entirety of the match, and then Andre Chase gets pinned or something.
Okay.
So all or nothing. I don't know if this is like, maybe they have some backstage segments about the Scripps thing, and it's like Chase University is going to be owned by Scripps with the whole proposition. Like, he tries to buy Chase University, and then this is all or nothing. Like, I'll give you the money to pay off your debt, or I get to own Chase University. Maybe it's something like that. so far no information about what that means. I hope Scripps does not control Chase University, though.
The poetry course will get filled up quite quickly. Slam poetry.
I get it. Josh Briggs gets himself disqualified in the Heritage Cup match because he hits Noam Dar with a bucket. Sounds so stupid to read out loud. Cora Jade beats Carmen Petrovich. Braun Breaker beats Nathan Fraser, as if anybody would have thought that Nathan Fraser would have a chance. Joe Gacy beats Joe Coffey. And something that they did on this episode that I was just like, I don't know where they're going here, but maybe it'll be a good thing in the long run. I've been hating this Joe Gacy character for the longest time, and I really hate these promos he's been cutting about, like, maybe I know what to do and maybe I don't, or maybe I don't know what to do and maybe I do. I forget exactly how he phrases it because it's so dumb, whatever way. But he's like a construction worker on this week of NXT, and he kind of picked a fight with Joe Coffey to be like, it takes a Joe to know a Joe. And of course he has to quote The Dark Knight and be all like, why are you so serious? Which is like, everybody just wants to repeat that thing. But he's, I guess, going to be associated with Hank and Tank going forward. And if they're doing a trio of Hank and Tank and Joe Gacy, I don't know what's happening there. That's not something I would have pictured.
Yeah, don't really have much to add to it.
So Riley Osborne beats Lexis King to get into the finals of the NXT Breakout Tournament. That's surprising to me.
I mean, yeah, it's surprising. I'm kind of pleased about it.
Yeah. The Trey Bear Hill attacks King after the match. Obafemi beats Tavion Heights. So at least at NXT New Year's Evil, the men's breakout tournament is supposed to be Obafemi against Riley Osborne. Whether this Riley Osborne Chase University thing has anything to do with the Scripps match, I don't know. But currently it kind of seems like Riley Osborne's the guy going forward for this. So I guess we'll have to keep our eyes on him.
I just based on the way they look, I would 100% go with Obafemi, wouldn't he?
It could very well be the case. I mean, that might even be a factor in with the whole Scripps thing. It could be like Obafemi might have some association with OTM, or
so he forces Riley Osborne to take a dive.
Or it could be something like that.
Or could screw him out of the match too, because that's part of the deal. Is that Obafemi's my guy, and so.
Yeah, it could be something like that. It could be distractions from Chase University where it's like, everybody's kind of haphazard and crazy right now, and then Riley Osborne gets distracted by Thea Hale doing something ringside and Obafemi wins, or I don't know, but it does seem like it's revolving mostly around Riley Osborne. And the fact that they did the Lexis King thing only for him to not make it to the finals is pretty interesting too, because the way that the bracket set up, they could have very easily had Riley Osborne versus Lexis King in the finals of that. And they went with this feud with Trey Bearhill instead. So, curious. Also, apparently, Dijak loses an NXT Underground match to Eddie Thorpe. For anybody who cares about that feud. So, that's 2 weeks worth of NXT that you don't have to watch now. Look at that. SmarkHotMama.com. You love us, don't you? Donate to the Patreon. That means that we should get into the ROH Final Battle stuff, which means to go back a little bit and talk about any kind of spillover from Dynamite. Now, Winter is Coming didn't really have much to do with this. They had some Continental Classic matches. It was, if I remember correctly, Roosh, Moxley, and Jay White had one. Let me double check. Yes, Roosh beat Jay Lethal, Jay White beat Mark Briscoe, John Moxley beat Swerve Strickland. Are we pretty much locked at this point that Moxley is going to be in that finals at World's End? Or is there still a chance that he gets booted out of that side?
All right, so here's kind of how the thing shaped up. So obviously with Moxley getting that victory over Swerve in the main event of this, it means that he's now on 12 points, Swerve's on 9, and Jay White, who defeated Mark Briscoe in the show, means that he is also on 9 points. So here's how this is the most insane way that it could end up, which is if Jay White beats John Moxley next week, which is the final match. And then if Swerve defeats Roosh in his final match, then they all end up on 12 points, and then they also all equal with each other because Swerve beat Jay White, Jay White beat Moxley, and Moxley beat Swerve. Which means they would need a triple threat match to determine who would actually win the group.
Or put all three of them in the finals and make it a four-way, right?
Yeah, but I'd highly doubt that. I think they would go with the route of they would have a three-way match at the start of World's End, with the winner facing the finalist of the blue one. But I also think that they won't go that route because I think that'd be just too crazy to do for the first thing, especially with like. Have you seen? Oh, you've seen, but there's been so much like discourse on X and other places about how a lot of people don't understand the rules of the Continental Classic or the standings. It's just like you get points if you win, or you get points if you win. You don't get points if you lose. Right? I don't understand why there's so much confusion about how these things work. I know round robin tournaments aren't very common in the US, but like NXT did one a couple of years back for the cruiserweight stuff, and people didn't seem to be that confused at that point. So, yeah, people are stupid. But
that's a general rule of thumb.
Yeah, but I think it's just interesting that that is a potential scenario they could go with. But I think the likelihood is there were probably what I would do is I'd have Swerve win. Naturally, I think Swerve at least should win to at least open up that possibility. And then I'd have Mox and Jay White go to a draw. With Jay just like desperately trying to get Mox to lose, but Mox just keeps kicking out, keeps getting away from stuff, keeps withstanding everything that Jay White throws at him. And so Moxley wins it with 13. And then you had Swerve with 12, Jay White with 10. Would all work out pretty well, really. But now it seems to be very much leaning towards Mox being in the final.
And on the Blue League is Andrade in the lead. He had beaten Brody King to score what he is at 9 points now. Yeah, Brody's at 6. Danielson's at 6. Kingston and Claudio are at 3, and Garcia's at 0. Yeah.
Yeah. So I think that the way this is going to go is now I'm more in line with what you guys are thinking of Eddie Kingston making it to the final. Because it would make total sense for the final to be Kingston versus Mox. So he's going to need to go on a run now. But the interesting thing is that he can only get to 9 points, and Andrade's already there. So
that would force another.
No, it wouldn't, because if you beat someone, he hasn't fought Andrade yet.
Oh wait, so then okay, yeah.
So what he needs to do, because he's beaten, he hasn't. Oh, he lost to Danielson as well. So what he actually really needs is he needs Danielson not to win another match. And he needs to beat Andrade. And he needs to win both of his matches to have any chance of winning. He needs to beat Andrade. So his next match is against Garcia.
Garcia, I think, right? Yeah.
And his final match, I presume, is against Andrade, because that makes the most sense. So he needs Andrade to lose against Claudio.
Which bumps Claudio up to 6.
Yeah, so I think it'll be very tight, this one. I don't know how necessarily this is going to end up, because I think Danielson's next match is against Brody. And if Brody wins that, he's also on 9, and he's beaten Kingston already. So realistically, you kind of need Kingston. The way they put this one is, I like the configuration of it, because realistically, you need Danielson and King to draw. And then hopefully lose their final matches for Kingston to get there. They've put it in a really interesting situation where Kingston seems almost impossible that he can make it to the final. Or maybe this is the one they decide to go with, the 3 people tying at the top, and then Kingston has to win a triple threat match earlier in the night and then also beat Moxley. That'd be a real underdog story if they're really pushing the underdog story. A guy who lost his first 2 matches then has to also win a match earlier in the show to then fight Moxley for the match later on, and still wins and still becomes the Triple Crown. That'd be a real epic story to tell.
Or that could be the reason why he doesn't beat Moxley. They could be like, you just wrestled right beforehand and Mox was fresh, and
yeah.
But then even then, imagine Moxley going into the match at Wrestle Kingdom and being like, I've got
Crown champion,
2 championship belts on my shoulders and 1 around my waist, and I'm going to fight for this United States / United Kingdom / global championship against another AEW wrestler and a New Japan guy. And it'll just be like the 20 belt championship thing is happening.
I think I know we've already done the like AEW awards stuff like that, but I think I can safely say that the Continental Classic has been one of the best things all year for AEW, and the only reason why we didn't talk about it that much is because it is so fresh and new, probably. But I just think that the story they're doing with all 12 guys on this in this tournament has been really, really well put together, and I'm looking forward for them to build on it next year. This definitely needs to be a thing that they don't forget about next year.
Well, stay tuned, because next week you are going to be hearing what we had recorded in advance for the AEW End of the Year Awards. And already, like, this episode of Dynamite that had happened, we didn't have the ability to factor that in, but I don't think that there was anything that happened on there that we would have been like, Riho beating Ruby Soho, that was match of the year or something.
But we did the other big thing from Dynamite was a progression in the Devil storyline.
Yeah, Hangman Adam Page getting attacked.
Yeah, so Hangman originally earlier in the night beating Roderick Strong 1-on-1, and then the show ended with a parking lot attack on Page, like throwing him through the hood of a car. It was obvious one of the guys was Wardlow.
Yeah, that's been like a consistent thing.
Yeah, it's probably pretty obvious that 2 of the other ones are Bennett and Taven. Probably one of them is Roddy as well.
Yeah.
And then there was the guy in the devil mask, but they're still not clear on that one. The guy in the devil mask looked bigger than he has in previous one.
I thought that too. Yeah. So whoever they got to fill that out was kind of standing out to me.
So it is still up in the air, but I know Roberts making connotations about the fact that every single attack has involved glass in some way, except the first one on Jay White. But like the Acclaimed getting thrown through a glass window, and the beer bottle, and now going through the car windshield. I
didn't think about that. So it's continuing the Jack Perry thing.
Yeah, he's drawing a lot of things to say like, oh, is that real glass? And it's just like, I'd still be underwhelmed if it's Jack Perry, but like we'll wait and see how it goes. It seemed like we're at least getting closer to the reveal of this. They're at least using them a lot more consistently than they were at the start of this story.
So the whole setup with the ROH World Tag Titles, I thought that they were going to address this on Dynamite, and they didn't. We are still in the same position that we were fundamentally, other than one match for the ROH Final Battle card. The lineup is just a few matches, and I mean tonight, I'm assuming that they're going to announce something. The episode hasn't aired yet when we're recording this, so they'll probably go. And then this match and that match and that match and that match or something. It's happening tomorrow, and here's the lineup that we got. So let's get into the pay-per-view point side of the ROH element of this podcast. We currently have a very quick rundown, and then we'll talk about the matches themselves. The new addition to the card, the AAA Mega Championship, is on the line between Black Taurus and El Hijo del Vikingo. I still don't know exactly how you pronounce that, because it's been pronounced like 100 different times that I've heard. But that's the new addition to the card. We still don't know who the extra person for the Survival of the Fittest finals is going to be. We'll talk about the match lineup in a moment. Keith Lee versus Shane Taylor. There's an I Quit match between Ethan Page and Tony Nese. The Fight Without Honor. Oh, they're calling it now the Jay Briscoe Memorial Fight Without Honor. I didn't notice that. That's pretty cool. FTR and Mark Briscoe against Blackpool Combat Club. And the main event of the ROH Women's World Title holder Athena against Billie Starkz. Oh, by the way, that's another thing that happened on Dynamite. I hated that Chris Jericho and Kenny Omega promo.
Oh yeah, that was bad.
That was so bad for all parties. Like,
yeah, they made that quite awkward.
There's moments in there where like Kenny Omega's like, "Do I crust Chris Jericho?" And he calls them the Winnipeg Jets, and Jericho's whole shtick about trying to name Ricky Starkz and Big Bill, none of them were funny. And it's big, like, this is the one that'll get him. It's Big Billie Starkz, and nobody reacts. And at least Ricky Starkz called out. He's like, well, that went over like a lead balloon or whatever he had said. They mentioned Enzo. That was probably the best line of the whole thing, but even that was just kind of awkward. But that match is going to happen at World's End, so a new addition to the card on that front. Not a fan of that segment.
Yeah, they didn't seem to connect with that at all. They all seemed to be pretty underwhelmed with what they were doing.
So do you think there's particular matches that they're going to add to this ROH match card? Because they're only at 6 matches. They typically have 12.
It's difficult to say because we haven't seen the next episode of Ring of Honor, and there aren't most of the stories they've been building are already got matches on this card. So I can't say with any real certainty. I mean, we could see we had to have the Ring of Honor 6-man titles defended at the moment, so they've thrown on with a match in place.
Wheeler Yuta still doesn't have a match set for the pure title.
Yeah, we could see him defend it. He's going to have a proving ground match against a local jobber on the Ring of Honor show. So on today's Ring of Honor show. So I imagine at some point during that, someone will either call him out backstage or call him out in the ring, and that will be the match that we have set up for. Oh no, we won't, because he's wrestling. Oh no, he's in wrestling. No. It's the other people in the back.
Yeah, it's Danielson, Moxley, and Claudio.
Yeah, I forgot about that. So yeah, we definitely see a match with him and against somebody. There's no one that they're necessarily building up for that one. Although I wouldn't be surprised if it's Josh Woods. Josh Woods has a fair number of pure matches. Usually most of the matches he has on Ring of Honor TV are pure matches. So it wouldn't surprise me if he was the guy they chose to step up for this one.
Yeah, even though I don't watch Ring of Honor, it still sticks in my craw, the idea of like the night before a pay-per-view that you're like, I don't know, how about these two in a match? Like, come on, build something more, announce things ahead of time. And that's whether it's NXT, Raw, SmackDown, AEW, Ring of Honor, like across the board. I hate how pro wrestling has gotten into this habit of like, you're either going to watch it or you don't. And we just need to announce something 10 minutes before it starts and shut up. I hate it. I like it so much better when they're like 2 weeks before the show and we know the majority of the lineup.
Yeah, I think that it would be good to have like more matches built up at this point, but I feel like they've established what the big matches are. These are the ones that, if you're tuning into the show, the ones that you're paying for. So yeah, that's just the way that a lot of wrestling cards work these days. Again, whether you like it or not, that's just what the norm is. So yeah, we'll just have to wait and see. I'm sure they'll put some things on a buy-in, whatever their equivalent is. Yeah, and we can see people like Will Nightingale wrestle. I know they're doing storylines with both, with Maria Kanellis managing both Cole Carter and Griff Garrison as a tag team, but also Layla Hirsch and Rachel Ellering as a tag team as well. So they could have some sort of match, maybe against the Renegades or something.
I'm hoping that instead of them just adding 6 more matches to the card at the last second and being like, here's 2 title matches on the main show, and then here's 4 matches on the pre-show, and it's just the guy versus guy, girl versus girl, 6-man tag, whatever it might be. I would much rather them be like, it's cheaper and it's a shorter event, and just kind of make it more condensed.
I mean, I'd be up for seeing like a trios title match. I think if you would have to put like on the other side, maybe someone like a Matt Sydal and Chris Daniels and someone else, maybe a Willie Mack or something. Again, it would be a thrown together team, but they've been doing some good stuff recently, so it'd be good to just see them on a card.
Since I don't watch this, I have no context about matches that they might be able to add, but I'm assuming that even if I did, it wouldn't really matter because outside of the 2 titles, I mean, if they don't have true people set up to challenge, then it seems like all the more reason that it would just be like, all right, it's Cheeseburger against Blake Christian or, whatever. So take your pick for random things. We have a AAA Mega Championship on this, and that's not even a part of this promotion. So that is also another thing, too. I have no context of whether Vikingo is in a position where it's like, well, clearly he's going to retain the title, or if it's like, well, clearly he needs to lose it. I've seen a tiny bit of Black Taurus. If I remember correctly, there was a match that I had seen where he just like dominated people, and I thought that he was like the standout and pretty cool. But I don't know if he's like in a position to win the title right now, or if he is like just kind of here to lose. I would assume at the very least that AAA would want their belt to change hands on one of their shows, but it's not like it hasn't changed hands elsewhere. So I don't know. I'm more excited for this match than a lot of other things. I'll say that.
Oh yeah, sure, it'll be a lot of fun because like Black Taurus is one of the best bases in Lucha Libre in terms of just his size and build. He's basically a dream for a lot of the other luchadors because they could do so many moves off of him because he's so powerful. And Vikingo is one of the most exciting wrestlers in the world right now in terms of some of the crazy death-defying stuff that he can do. So I'm sure they'll put together a really good match. It's like obvious that Vikingo is going to retain due to the fact that his current title reign is sitting on 738 days, and which is still about 30 days short of the record title run as the AAA Mega Champion, which is held by the previous champion, Kenny Omega, which is helped by the fact that he won it in 2019 and then the world shut down. But Vikingo is a legitimate 738 days, like working multiple promotions, holding that title. So yeah, Vikingo's going to win. He's the established name, both in just Ring of Honor and AEW and AAA. And Black Taurus is, he works in AAA and he works for TNA right now. So I think the likelihood is that Vikingo retains, and we'll just see a pretty fun match out of it. All 4 fun lucha matches on a show which doesn't have any other fun lucha matches so far.
Yeah, I would assume that more than likely Black Taurus wouldn't walk out with the belt unless it was a AAA show. And like I said, I'm more excited for this than a lot of other ones because I do like Vikingo. He has been consistently like, wow, look at this dude. And I do remember liking Black Taurus, so like that's be fun. I'm looking forward to that way more than I am the I Quit match between Tony Nese and Ethan Page. I have no context of the feud again, as I will repeat for some of these other things, but I don't necessarily have a lot of faith in this, partially because it is an I Quit match and they're kind of 50-50. If it's done really, really well, it can be a really good match. But more often than not, it's just boring, like a last man standing. And when it's Page and Nese, there were different eras where I thought both of them deserved more than what they got, but I kind of feel like they already hit their ceiling. You know what I mean?
I mean, they've been doing good stuff. I mean, I appreciate the feud they've put together for this. It's very just like simple by numbers, but it's been effective, which is essentially Ethan Page turned up in Ring of Honor saying this was his opportunity for a fresh start and to try and pick up some wins again. And he was immediately scouted out by Mark Sterling, but he refused to have him as his manager. He went on a winning streak. Then he lost his first loss in Ring of Honor came against Tony Nese due to Sterling's interference. Then they had a rematch where Sterling was kicked out ringside, and then Ethan Page got the victory. So this is kind of the rubber match where it's going to be an I Quit match, and also Sterling is going to be handcuffed to the ring post to prevent him from getting involved in it. And I mean, they did something. They had a contract signing for this, even.
Woo!
Which ended with Nese putting Page through a table.
I would not have seen that coming. If somebody goes through a table at a contract signing, what?
But I'd say like they've put some effort into this one, so it does have a reason to be on there. And like the last time there was a match like this, which felt a bit like weird going into it on the last Ring of Honor show, was that trios hardcore match between Dark Order and the Righteous, and I thought that match was one of my, just from the Ring of Honor side, one of my favorite Ring of Honor matches all year. So maybe this one has the potential. Maybe they've cooked up something nice for this one. I'd hope so, because as I've never been the biggest fan of Tony Nese, just because he doesn't have a lot of charisma, which is ideal that he's working with Mark Sterling, because Mark Sterling makes up for that lack of charisma. And Ethan Page has always been a very hit and miss guy of me. Sometimes he's too comedic. Sometimes you feel the potential's there, but he's never capitalized on it. He hasn't really stepped up since his tag team with Josh Alexander ended back in Impact. So I would assume that they have Ethan Page get the victory here, because long term I think I don't say like more upside, but Tony Nese knows what his role is in both Ring of Honor and AEW, which is to be like a jobber to the stars.
Mm-hmm.
To make
go out there, have a good
good
match, but lose.
Yeah, exactly. So, and at the end of the day, like he's somewhat protected in Ring of Honor because most of the faces against jobbers and stuff. So, but I think that that's like, we'll see what they can put together. Hopefully, they can impress some people. But yeah, I'm going with Ethan Page winning.
So Ethan Page is in one of those positions where going down to Ring of Honor makes him feel like a bigger deal. I would have put him in this Survival of the Fittest finals for the vacant ROH World Television title, because the lineup for this, it's not calling out to me. It's currently Dalton Castle, Komander, Kyle Fletcher, Lee Johnson, Lee Moriarty, and TBD. And I am desperately going, I hope TBD is a big enough name, because look, these people aren't like awful or anything, but I mentioned many times before, Kyle Fletcher is just a guy to me. I cannot tell you anything that Lee Johnson and Lee Moriarty do, period. Komander is, he does some good flippy stuff, but between him and Bandito and, the way that like the luchadors, in my perspective, they kind of like, you have to do something to stand out a little bit more. And we hear a million times, this person's the next Rey Mysterio and all this. And I'm like, all right, well, I haven't quite seen Komander be on the level of like Ray Phoenix, even for another example. And Dalton Castle to me is just a guy that I don't quite get, really. He seems like the biggest deal out of this bunch, but I'm like, man, this feels like a major step down from Samoa Joe. And I'm really hoping whoever that last person is, that they are somebody that is justified to be in the match. They win the match. They're the champion going forward. They're a bigger deal. I don't know who it would be. And as far as I'm aware, there's not like a contenders match or something that's being set up for that, right? Like it's these two people,
but we're not aware of if it is what it is yet.
Like they didn't announce something ahead of time to like.
No, I've seen. Like, I've been searching around now to see if I can find it, but they haven't announced that as a match for
tonight's episode. It's not like it's like Scorpio Sky is in a match against Ortiz, and the winner's going to get in there or something.
Well, I don't think either of those two would be.
Two random people that pop in my mind. But even those two would make more sense to me as like potentials that I would have tossed in there, or like I would have done something more with like let me look at the roster and see if there's anybody that stands out to me. Like, throw a Buddy Matthews in there, or throw a Brody King in there. They're
not Ring of Honor guys.
Yeah, they could be. All you gotta do is put them in the match. Like Blackpool Combat Club isn't, and they're going to be wrestling one of the biggest matches here.
Oh yeah, but that's just an invitational thing for them to come in for this one-off thing. This person's going to be is going to be a champion in Ring of Honor.
Yeah.
And if you give it to someone like a Buddy Matthews, he's just going to be on Collision or Dynamite. He's not actually going to appear on Ring of Honor that often, probably.
I'd be cool with like
that's the same issue with what Samoa Joe was. The reason why they're doing this reset is that one of these guys is going to be a Ring of Honor champion.
I'd be cool with Jake Hager filling in that spot. I'd be cool with like so many people, and I'm not liking this lineup of like, for instance, if it's like the next champion is like Lee Johnson, I'll be like, okay, you go from Samoa Joe holding it for the longest title reign, and then Lee Johnson. It could be because I'm missing out on the Ring of Honor stuff. Maybe I'm missing out on these guys having some great stuff and they're really building momentum. But from that outsider's perspective, I'm like, wow, this does not look like a championship lineup.
I mean, I'm pretty into this lineup. Dalton Castle is a former Ring of Honor world champion. He's one of the most prominently featured people in Ring of Honor, and I'd say like you might not get him, but the fact is loads of people do, and a lot of people really like Dalton Castle. Komander, I mean, I haven't seen anyone really compare him. Well, as a luchador, you're just necessarily compared to people like Phoenix and Pentagon and Rey Mysterio, because that's just your lot in life that you have to get compared to them. But I don't think people would necessarily think that he has to be at that level yet. He's very, very young. He's only been wrestling for he's 24 years old. He's been it has been wrestling since 2012 because they start ridiculously young at those
they're like
ages, but
pop out of the womb and they got a mask on.
I wouldn't be expecting that he's going to be like the next Rey Mysterio or Phoenix just yet, but like being in matches like this, the only way to really get him to that level at some point. Lee Johnson's a bit of an oddball in this one, but he has been essentially he's going back to being Lee Johnson rather than Cody ripoff. When he was literally just doing a load of like Cody and like people from that the old iteration of the Nightmare Factory stuff, beforehand, and now he's going back to being just Lee Johnson, and that guy has a bit more of a, I don't say like character about him, but he has a bit more of a uniqueness about him in terms of his moveset. Lee Moriarty is fun. He's always been a guy who's just never really been pushed to any sort of real level in AEW or Ring of Honor at this point. He's always been like an understudy to whether it's Shane Taylor nowadays or was Big Bill beforehand. And then Carl Fletcher is part of the Don Callis family. And I think that this could be the moment for him because, like, you may not see it, but loads of people in wrestling think that Carl Fletcher is going to be world champion one day in a promotion, and like they see him as he'll be at he was handpicked by Will Ospreay to be part of United Empire, and he and a lot of other people think that he'll be the guy that steps into Ospreay's shoes one day as like a guy that people think in the conversation as best wrestler in the world. So I'd say like you might not see it yet, and there's probably a lot of people that are similar boat because he hasn't been given a huge amount to run with in AEW or Ring of Honor so far. As someone who has followed him throughout his time in New Japan Pro Wrestling and seen some things beforehand as well, I know how good this guy is. But I know how good he is as a tag team guy. As a singles guy, it's a lot more restricted. But I'm interested to see what he does in this match. I think that he is more than capable. He would be, out of the 5 people that are currently listed for this, he would be my choice to win the television title.
Really? Not even just to go with Dalton Castle for being the more established name?
I think obviously he's a more established name and that'd be fun, but I think that this is the chance to give Carl Fletcher something to help establish him as that guy that everyone thinks that he can be one day. Make him a television champion. When Davis comes back, he can still be the champion, but teaming with Davis as well on the side of it. But a lot of it will depend on who this TBD is.
Yeah.
And we know that Bandido's still injured, so it's not going to be him to come back. You could see someone like, I would say, there's a lot of people in Ring of Honor that are that were previously part of Ring of Honor that are part of the AEW roster now. You're looking at guys like Roosh potentially, who might not have anything to do. I think you throw on this. I know he's part of the Continental Classic, but he is mathematically eliminated, so he can't win the Continental Classic. So they might want to throw him in there. I said there's a few other options as well. Like I think that's just from the people that I see on Ring of Honor regularly, all having doing good. Like you do have Christopher Daniels there. You do have Evan. I say Evan Bourne, Matt Sydal.
Evan Bourne popping back up.
Yeah. Do have Matt Sydal. I'm a big fan of El Gringo Loco. It would be another like the more luchador style thing to put on for Komander as well. I don't think it'll be either like Cole Carter or Griff Garrison because they've been stuck as a tag team. I don't think it'll be anyone from the Bear Bronson or those people. Neil Boulder, yeah. I don't think it'll be any of those people. I don't think it'll be anyone like super significant because we know who's involved in that trios match. That none of them is going to be in this one. So yeah, I don't imagine it's going to be someone who's everyone's feel like, oh, that's a guy at Samoa Joe's level, because fundamentally, like, it was always going to be a step down from Samoa Joe, because nobody who is at Samoa Joe's level or higher would go down to Ring of Honor to do it. They're on AEW and they're probably pushed quite heavily. So yeah, we'll just wait and see who this other one. It could be people like it could be a Blake Christian or a Jack Cartwheel or something like that, just to give a bit more of like a different flavour to the match. But I'm excited for it. They've got some guys. It's basically Dalton Castle and a bunch of young guys that could do some fun stuff. So yeah, we'll wait and see. I think the match will be good, and I'd say I think Cole Fletcher's going to win, based on who's currently in the match.
It's Ronda Rousey. She's going to come in and beat everybody. As far as prediction goes, I'm just going to lean towards TBD, because if they waited to put out that person, maybe they got like a plan to just kind of be like, you know, a big name in there or something.
Well, you got to think, like, would they really announce like a super big name one day before you're supposed to go for the show?
I wouldn't, but then again, I would have had a totally different setup for this anyway. I wouldn't have only 6 matches the day before either, you know? So the way that they book things isn't the same logic that I approach it. And Tony Khan seems to like doing last minute. Why aren't you paying attention? Of course, we would announce things at the last second, kind of to build up some last minute stuff. And
there must be a method to that madness, because there's never been really an AEW or Ring of Honor show that's done a bad buy rate. So clearly people do respond to that.
Or at least those people are already paying for it anyway. And he's like, I don't feel the need to, you know, like maybe he gets 90% of the buys the moment that it's on sale, just out of the fact that it's on sale, and then he doesn't actually have to build a card for it, you know? Or maybe he likes that like rush, that last second, like if people were on the fence about it, that they need like one final announcement of like, here's a bunch of extra things to get you excited if you're not really into it yet.
Yeah, maybe it just works for him. Admittedly, the ticket sales haven't been great for this.
Yeah, I wouldn't picture that it would be.
Well, apparently the tickets doubled as soon as the Jay Briscoe Memorial match was announced.
Yeah, and that match is the one that I'm looking forward to the most. That's FTR and Mark Briscoe against the Blackpool Combat Club, Claudio Castagnoli, Jon Moxley, Bryan Danielson. They're going to beat the tar out of each other. They're talented dudes, big names. Yeah, just this is the one that I'm going to be the most excited for sure.
Bryan Danielson's a fucking madman.
I don't know why he's doing another match like this right before this whole Wrestle Kingdom
he's
thing.
already going through a Continental Classic with a damaged orbital bone and an arm that's still recovering from being broken a couple of months ago. And now he's going to a fight without honor with FTR and Mark Briscoe. Yeah, he's a crazy person, but you know, God love him for it. Like
he's like, I'm determined to make 2024 my last year wrestling if I have to force myself to not be able to stand.
Yeah, but yeah, this match will be just so much fun. All the guys involved are great, and like the fact they've made this a Jay Briscoe Memorial thing means there's going to be a lot of emotion into this, as well as just being a fantastic violent match as well. Yeah, I can't think of anything better, and beyond the fact that you need, obviously Briscoe needs to win the match. I
had written up last night my EWN predictions and all, and I had said Blackpool Combat Club wins. Now that they're calling it the Jay Briscoe Memorial, you can't have Blackpool Combat Club win.
Well, so like, you're saying like now they're calling it Jay Briscoe Memorial. When Danielson challenged them for the match, he said it was in memory of Jay Briscoe. So I don't know why it's just like now it's the Jay Briscoe Memorial. It's like he announced it as the Jay Briscoe Memorial match.
See, even last night when I was looking up more information to see if they changed the card, I hadn't seen any information on like Wikipedia or elsewhere about it.
God.
Like the graphic for it and stuff.
But they hadn't officially branded it as that. But that was the reason why this match was put together, is because Danielson said, we want, like last year was Jay Briscoe's final match in Ring of Honor. Let's do something to remember him. So we're challenging FTR and Mark Briscoe to a match.
Yeah, like the graphic just says fight without honor.
Okay.
So like the switch over of me finding out that information immediately just goes, you gotta give the pin to Mark Briscoe. Like whether he pins Claudio or Moxley or Danielson, I would lean more towards he probably would pin Claudio. And that's the thing that you got to go with, because it would be incredibly awkward if it's the Jay Briscoe Memorial and it's like, remember how your brother died? Well, you take the pin, like I just can't see that happening.
No, absolutely. Yeah, you just have a lot of fun and have Mark Briscoe get the win. That's the easiest thing in the world to make this like a match that people will celebrate and enjoy for a long time to come. But yeah, I'm super excited for this match. Just 6 awesome guys having an awesome match for an awesome cause.
And then we've got Shane Taylor against Keith Lee. A setup where I know that they have history together, but me not being a Ring of Honor fan, it's lost on me, like the depth of that. I'm not really interested in it. I guess I'll just go Keith Lee wins.
I think Keith Lee will win as well, but this is your designated crowd start chanting meat match. Yeah, which are 2 big guys slapping meat for
a lot of beef in the ring.
Yeah, I think it'll be fun. I'd say the history is that they were former tag team partners before Keith Lee left for NXT. So they're just bringing up some bad blood over that. So I don't think it's going to be anything super special. But especially because Keith Lee's not anywhere near his peak anymore, and Shane Taylor is good, but again, they haven't utilised him a huge amount throughout the time in Ring of Honor so far. So, but I think that they will try and put something cool together. I think Keith will try and do some of his more unique offense and more try and do more of the speedy stuff as well to try and counterbalance the fact that Shane Taylor's probably going to try and be the power guy in this match. But yeah, I think eventually Keith Lee will get the victory in this one.
And then the main event is the women's world title. Billie Starkz challenging Athena, which I would assume Billie Starkz would win.
I would assume so too, but I also assume that Willow Nightingale would win last.
Yeah, that's true.
Last pay-per-view, and she lost to Athena. But I mean, this has been such a well-told story. I'm sure Rob would obviously gush even more than me over this one because of how well-told it's been. But this has been a feud that started at Forbidden Door when Athena faced Billie Starkz on the buy-in for the Ring of Honor Championship in just a throwaway match because Billie was a new signing, like this 18-year-old prodigy, just challenging Athena. And they've gone on a whole arc since then of Athena trying to toughen Billie Starkz up, but essentially in her mind toughen Billie Starkz up, but in reality she was just using Billie as a pawn in her games and to help her out and to like cheer her on, and this whole Minions in Training stuff with them and Lexi Nair getting involved, so many great backstage segments and vignettes, and all leading up to the point where Billie Starkz just is tired of Athena just pushing her around and belittling her and treating her like she's nothing. She snaps, she attacks Athena. Athena gets even more violent, goes after her as well. I assume there's going to be a big brawl segment at the end of, because Athena's got just a tune-up match on the episode of Ring of Honor tonight. So I imagine they'll end in like a big brawl as well, a lot of separating everyone from each other. And yeah, this is more than worthy of being the main event match. I'd say even if Eddie Kingston was in the process of still holding the Ring of Honor title and defending it regularly, nothing he would do would supplant this match as the main event. So yeah, I think it's the perfect opportunity to crown Billie Starkz as your new kind of, I don't say new face of Ring of Honor, but to hold that title, to be like a young, scrappy champion, take on all comers, and then potentially lose it down the line to a more veteran name or someone else that comes into Ring of Honor soon. Like I say, like Ty Valkyrie's now doing more stuff in Ring of Honor. You've got the Renegade Twins, you've got like Trish Adora and Lady Frost, and I mean Willow still does stuff with Ring of Honor, so she could take it at some point. Mercedes Martinez and Diamante are there as well. So there's plenty of options to like continue. I actually Layla Hirsch probably makes the most sense as the next Ring of Honor Women's Champion. So having her be Billie Starkz would be a way to do that. But I also think that losing the title was the opportunity for Athena to go back to AEW and fight for the Women's Championship or the TBS Championship, because she's done such brilliant work in Ring of Honor, and I'm sure she's had a lot of fun doing it as well. But it's time for her to take that energy and apply it on the main shows. Because, I mean, I know you've said like you're tired of the same people wrestling for the AEW Women's title. I think Athena would be the breath of fresh air you need to take the women's scene in AEW a lot more seriously.
Yeah, I think that it's time for Athena to move over and to be a big fish in a small pond. Is like, that's a good thing in some ways, but she's held the title for how long at this point?
It's she passed the year mark like a week or so ago.
Yeah, so it's like, it's not like she just won it and it's like, you can't have her lose right now. Like, you know what I mean? I think it's time. And if you got this as a main event, you crown a new champion. It's somebody that you are going to try to build this around a little bit in the future, and it's particularly like a young star. So it's like you can kind of, she's about like 20 or something.
If
you
that,
can kind of,
she's 19 still.
19. Right? So yeah, like you can make this like a big moment, and I think that's how that ends. I think Billie Starkz ends up winning that belt.
Yeah, it would be the good way to end the story. It's like the right way of doing it. Like the student finally beats the teacher and like sends her packing. I can imagine them hugging at the end of it as well, and Athena raising her hand and say like, "This is the girl for the future." And yeah, and then she can go off into the sunset and do some great things on AEW, because she's definitely earned not in the right of just being back onto AEW, but to be like a very prominently featured name. I would be totally down for her being the one that beats Toni Storm for the title.
Could happen. If it's not Jamie Hayter, I mean, nothing stopping Athena from being that spot.
I mean, both titles in AEW is held by heels right now, and Athena's technically the heel in this match, but she could come back in as a babyface.
Especially if she has a little moment in there where she is like putting her over. You know, yeah, exactly. That could be the big switch over like that. They've done different heel and face turns with less, that's for sure.
But I'm very much looking forward to this. I mean, like I said earlier, that I've said in the past that Athena and Willow Nightingale is my favourite women's match of the year. Not out of both promotions, but definitely one of the highest, definitely top 5 from both promotions all year. So it'll be cool to see if this match can live up to it as well. I'm not too sure, because I don't think Billie is at the level of Willow Nightingale, but I think maybe just the emotion and story that's gone into this will make me appreciate this potentially even more than the Willow one.
Alrighty, well, that is the ROH Final Battle portion of this. We already ran down the hot tags, which means I just want to remind everybody of some plugs, like the fan feedback survey. Go ahead and vote on that. Tell us what you were the most happy about with Smark Out Moment from this year, and the things you think we can potentially improve on. And also just, generally speaking, give me some ideas about like, what's your favorite way to listen to the podcast? Why do you or do you not check out the articles? What the other kind of things that I have out on there. Make sure, of course, you are clicking around on all that Marketplace stuff, the Redbubble, the TeePublic, Patreon, so on and so forth. Double check that you hit that like button on this video too. And make sure that you are checking out fanboysanonymous.com for everything happening over in the Blue Brand. Go to the YouTube channel there, head up to Patreon, check out the amangotree.com link tree, or anthonymango.com. It's the same exact thing. Like, share, follow, favorite, subscribe to all those things you can find, including my personal account at facebook.com/TonyMango or twitter.com/TonyMango, or everything else pretty much .com/TonyMango. And make sure that you are following Callum too.
Yeah, but you can follow me on Twitter at Wigmeister14. Check out the power rankings every Saturday on smarkoutmoment.com, where I rank the WWE superstars based on their previous week's performances. And there you can also find the Fantasy League, also at www.fantasyleague.com, to see how our teams are doing, who's picking up points as we head towards the Royal Rumble and then beyond that WrestleMania, where we crown our winner for the season.
All right, everybody. Well, stay tuned, because next week we are going to be getting into the AEW End of the Year Awards. 1 video per day, and then we are also going to be talking about the WWE End of the Year Awards. Of course, before that happens, we've got the ROH Final Battle Pay-Per-View Point post-show coming up tomorrow night, so stay tuned for that. Join us live immediately following that show, and we will see you then. For now, this has been another Smark Out moment, and we are being counted out.